Why, hello, everyone. I'm sure you may know at least one of these two people, most likely the fellow on your right, but you may not have seen the man on your left. He's famous for delivering a talk based on answering the following question: what wisdom would you impart to the world if you knew it was your last chance? His name is Randy Pausch. He was a father, husband, computer scientist at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. Randy had already been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer when he was asked to give a last lecture, one in a series where professors imagined what they would talk about in their final lesson. Most people don't deliver under such pressuring circumstances, which made his lecture even more compelling. His talk to his students at the school was recorded and became a YouTube sensation. Soon he was on Oprah, Good Morning America, and finally came out with a book called The Last Lecture. Randy's story is remarkable, partly because it showed great human resilience in the face of personal tragedy. He knew his time on earth was limited. He knew the day he would die, as he said, it would be like pushing his family off a cliff. So he set out, while still strong, to do what he could to build a net to catch them and cushion the blow of his departure. Picked a couple notable quotes from his lecture and the book. The key is to keep asking, are you spending time on the right things? Because time is all you have. Be prepared. Luck is truly where preparation meets opportunity. And to be cliche, death is a part of life. Going to happen to all of us. I've had the blessing of getting a little bit of advance notice, and I can optimize my use of my time down the home stretch. Well, Randy died quietly at home in July of 2008, about 10 months after giving his last lecture. His family surrounded him. I think it's safe to say he left his family, his children, and the world with a profound and personal message about values, belief, and wisdom. And not just his wife and his children, but also his children's children. Chain of generations we all have a link in. If you could say someone had a good death, it certainly was Randy. The details of Randy's death stand in contrast to those of this man, the actor and producer James Gandolfino. You may remember him as Tony Soprano, mafia crime boss, lead character in the HBO hit series The Sopranos. Now, unlike Randy, James Gandolfino died suddenly at age 51 while traveling in Italy. His death shocked his fans and his family. Unfortunately, he hadn't done a thorough job of planning his affairs. He left 80% of his estate to his sisters and his daughter in a way that triggered a painful $30 million tax bill. And unlike Randy, James didn't get to play a role in writing his final legacy either. Instead, his ending strongly resembled the controversial last scene of The Sopranos. Now, if you're a fan, you may remember it. Tony arranges to have his family meet him for dinner at a local diner. First, his wife Camilla arrives, then his son AJ. Tony orders fried onion rings for the table. While they wait, his daughter Meadow. Tony keeps looking at the door, checking to see his daughter's arrival. Camera jumps to his daughter outside, trying to park her car. Then back to Tony. The tension builds. He keeps looking up. We're all wondering who will come in the door, Meadow or a mafia hitman. And then, finally, goes to black. The 6-season series finale ends, leaving the storyline unresolved. There is no deathbed scene, no final words, just a jarring cut to black. Just as James Gandolfino's real life ended too. So, in the opposite manner of Randy, James didn't get to write the story for the ages. I hope you can see in our little tale of two families here a hint of the topics we will touch on today, namely the importance and seriousness of thinking through your legacy and planning for the next generation. It's never too soon to start that. Hello, everyone. And for those who I've not met before, welcome. I'm Tim Gardner, founder and wealth manager at Chatham Retirement Partners. We provide wealth management services to the sandwich generation, just without all the baloney. I appreciate you coming and committing to learning more about legacy planning for the next generation. Probably wondering, why is Tim talking about legacy planning for the generations? Well, I do this to serve my clients and my community because I've seen some problematic, unhappy situations when families don't consider these issues. When no legacy planning is done, we see a range of unhappy outcomes often impact multiple generations. Because legacy planning is often a red herring for a life insurance pitch, let me assure you right now, as with all my presentations that I do, this is all about a process and not about a product. After the presentation, I'll give you some more information on legacy planning to help you remember everything we covered today. I'll also invite you to start developing your legacy plan for your family. I'll tell you more about that later. I'm excited to be doing this presentation for you today. And when it comes to today's topic, it's not the old stuffy version of traditional estate planning. Instead, we see legacy planning in a broader, more positive light that will help you find meaning in your life and make sure it counts for something to your loved ones who will still be here and left behind long after you're gone. As we saw in the last lecture, Randy recounted his childhood dreams, the outstanding people he had met in his lifetime, and the lessons he had learned along the way. The lecture has been seen and read by millions of people. Now that's a legacy. Yours may not be as far-reaching as his, but it will be just as meaningful to your family, if not more so, because it's yours. So, let's continue trying to understand the seriousness of the problem many families face in this area, and then look at some solutions to help you and your family avoid the worst scenario. We can see here one aspect of the problem that we face. Many people haven't thought through how they want their money and their estate handled after they're gone. They think they have forever. Not reflected here are the people who have given it some thought, but not recently, nor fully, just as in the case with James Gandolfino. But things do go wrong. Maybe you die before you get everything set up. You get hit by a bus before you even have a chance to tell the people that you love them, much less write a will or start writing down your own memories. Terrible thought, right? Well, let's consider what would happen in the aftermath of your untimely death. Your family is left grieving and in the dark about what you own, where everything is, and what your wishes are. Think about your closest next of kin, your spouse, your children. First, they're in shock to learn of your untimely death. They start going through your papers. What will they find? A neat folder marked, open in case of my death, with all your assets listed and your wishes spelled out? Or a hodgepodge of papers, no sense to anyone but you, and now you're gone? Or your estate planning documents are missing, incomplete, or in conflict. Perhaps you never made a will, so no one knows who you want your assets to go to. Or if you did sign your will, maybe it conflicts with other beneficiary designations. This happens. People often update their wills when they get remarried, but forget to update their IRA and other investment beneficiary designations, which still list their ex-spouse. So let me ask you, if you died tomorrow, how would your assets be distributed? Do you even know? Family members will start arguing over what you would have wanted. Granted, you're not around to see the turmoil, but I'm asking you to imagine it now. Without clear instructions from you, what would your family members say to one another? Would there be arguments over what you would have wanted? You may have heard of ordinary loving families who turned on another after the death of a parent without a will. If there's no will or trust, the estate goes to probate. This means the court takes over and divides the assets based on state law. This may or may not be what you want, but probate fees are deducted from your estate, leaving less for your heirs. And if you were to die tomorrow, what if your estate owed estate taxes? Perhaps one of the worst things to contemplate about sudden death is leaving particular sentiments unsaid. Some people say I love you at the end of every phone conversation to ensure it's the last thing said if they do get hit by a red bus. It doesn't do the job of telling your spouse, your children, or your grandchildren how you genuinely feel about it. So let me ask you, if you got hit by a bus tomorrow, what things will you wish you had said to people that you love? In the end, your life's impact can be diminished between confusion, family disputes, messy estate planning, and all the things you wish you had said but didn't. Your legacy comes up short. The aftermath of your death is not nearly as positive as you wish it could have been. What else could go wrong? For some, a fate worse than death is sudden incapacity. You suffer a stroke. You get hit by a bus, and rather than dying, you end up in a coma. In some ways, this is worse than dying unprepared, because you have to go on living. So who will make decisions about your care? Someone you love and trust? Or will you be at the mercy of someone you don't know because you didn't set things up properly? Here's what can go wrong. Your medical wishes are not honored because no one knows what they are. And what else? Well, your money's frozen. Your bills go unpaid. Your investments are left unattended because you never signed a power of attorney appointing a trusted person to act on your behalf. No one else has the authority to transfer money, pay those bills, or do anything with your finances as long as you are incapacitated. So here's the problem. People equate estate planning with death planning and therefore block out and never do anything, or not enough. The quote here sums it up. One of the greatest obstacles in estate planning is the perpetuating of the death denial. Most people don't want to plan for post-death lives because death is a scary topic to even think about. The truth is, on both financial, probably more importantly, an emotional and spiritual level, that lifetime of experiences, the hard-earned wisdom and insight that make up our lives never gets discussed and never gets passed on to the next generation. And that's the real loss to everyone. Probably thinking, my family knows that I love them and I'm not a best-selling author or a Hollywood movie star with tens of millions of dollars in the bank. So what does it matter? I don't take these issues seriously. What are the consequences? The consequences of having no estate plan are tragic. As Lawrence Greenberg notes here, heirs may be subject to several obstacles, such as probate, creditors, lawsuits, judgments, and even legal fees, all of which can compromise the value of your legacy. Typical problems that arise when no one thinks about estate planning include no will or trust, overlooked provisions such as guardianships for minors, no tax planning, financial strains such as cash shortage for survivors. Also sometimes, decisions are not communicated to the next generation. Details not revealed until after your death. Family tensions arise after the will is read, or a reluctance to make a plan or update a plan. Not a good picture, is it? This is why attorneys, accountants, and financial professionals like myself have been pressing clients for years to plan their estates. The benefits of estate planning are genuine. It spells out health care issues. Possessions go to the heirs that you choose without wrangling or dispute. Avoids additional, unplanned legal expense. Traditional estate planning doesn't capture our lives and values fullness. What's missing are the intangible assets we've collected, often the fruits of a life well lived. They include two types of things not included in traditional estate planning. Character assets, your values, your health, your spirituality, your heritage, purpose, life experiences, talents and plans for giving, your intellectual assets, business systems, alliances, ideas, skills, and traditions, your reputation and your wisdom. Now, we're probably saying a pretty grim picture. We don't want this to happen to our family. Is there a way we can achieve all these things, not just the nuts and bolts of a traditional estate planning? The answer is yes. It's called generational planning, and it recognizes that we're all much more than just the physical assets that counted in our estate plan. So, here's our definition of generational planning. Generational planning is a modern, intentional, potentially fun, two-phase process that eliminates the worst aspects of estate planning and helps you plan your legacy. So generational planning has two objectives. The first objective is legacy planning, a process of passing on your family's tangible asset and will. The second objective conveys your family's values, their history, to the next generation. Both are done for the benefit of the next generation. So, also important to say that generational planning is not just driven by documents in the way that stuff your estate planning processes are. As you think about the many people closest to you, here are some thoughts on some key considerations for successful legacy planning for generations. First, consider your spouse if you're married. If you were to die first, you need to ensure sufficient income for the rest of your spouse's life, be through insurance or just making sure there are enough assets to draw from. You also want to ensure that whichever of you goes first, the surviving spouse can manage the finances on their own. We see many cases where the husband makes the investment decisions and the wife pays the bills. It's a natural division of labor in a marriage, and they each do what they do best. Then one of them dies, and the other must take over without having been trained to do so. In a successful legacy, the married couple, while alive, plan and ensure that either spouse can carry on and manage the finances regardless of which spouse goes first. Children need to be prepared for their inheritance. We've all heard stories about trust fund babies and inheritors who have no appreciation or respect for the money left to them. Without proper guidance, they tend to spend it rather than preserving it for their own future or for future generations. Inheritance planning starts with understanding the fundamental values of the inheritance to protect and grow the family's wealth. These values need to be passed on to the kids. Then there are the practical matters of investing and withdrawing the money without incurring unnecessary taxes or fees. You want your grandchildren to understand how and what you lived for. Sometimes it's easier to skip a generation when passing on these things. Grandchildren usually have a greater appreciation than children do for what it was like when you were young and growing up and what you learned from your experiences. So seize the opportunity to start sharing your family stories and conveying some of those memories and values you grew up with. And finally, think about all the people you touch. Think about the causes you care about, the organizations that are doing good work in the world and that you contribute to now. Maybe you'd like to leave something to them so they can continue to do their good work. Naturally, you may say to yourself, okay, this makes sense, but how can I do this in a way that's not overwhelming, complicated, or extremely expensive? You don't have to be overwhelmed. By following my 6-step legacy planning process to leave your mark on the next generation, let me take you through a quick overview of these 6 steps. Part 1 involves planning for incapacity. We like to get this out of the way first because it's essential and accessible. Incapacity planning is so easy that it's surprising everyone hasn't done it. People of all ages should do it because an accident or a stroke could happen to anyone at any time. There are 2 forms to do this. First is the healthcare. All you have to do is state a few simple wishes about how you would want to be cared for and the name of the person to interact with the doctors and make medical decisions on your behalf. This could be a spouse, loved one, or close friend. For finances, you sign a power of attorney giving another person legal authority to act on your behalf. This allows them to pay the bills, transfer money, and do what is needed to keep your finances in order while you cannot do so for yourself. Again, it could be a spouse, adult child, close friend, or even a trusted professional. You must be mentally competent to sign these forms, so we hope you would do it now. This is step 1 of shrewd legacy planning. Once you've completed it, you'll feel much better, and then you're ready to tackle. Part 2 is getting organized. You know you've been meaning to do this, or maybe you are already pretty well organized, but not in a way that would make sense to your loved ones if you suddenly weren't around anymore. Your objective in this step is to prepare for the real business of estate planning. First, you need to identify all your assets. You will know how to divide them among your beneficiaries. This includes your savings accounts, your investment accounts, retirement accounts, real estate, business interests, and significant personal property like jewelry or artwork. You need to have this list before you ever sit down with an attorney to have your estate planning documents drawn up. Another reason to do this is to determine if your estate will be subject to estate taxes. If it is, that is, if the total value of your estate exceeds the estate tax exemption amount, you'll want to talk to an attorney about some of the legal ways to reduce or avoid estate taxes. If you go on the internet, you can read about many celebrities who didn't properly plan and whose estates owed millions of dollars in estate taxes that could have been avoided. If you don't read about a particular celebrity's estate plan, it means they did it right. They set up a trust, saved the estate taxes, and kept their affairs private. Of course, you will want to make things easy on your spouse and children. Make it so they have access to your important papers and passwords. Let them know what to do first, like taking care of the pet or getting the mail. In a non-legal letter to your survivor, you can say anything you want. You can give them general instructions. Tell them about what you want to do with your Facebook account. Tell them where the key to the home safe is. Anything of that nature. And we can help you with this. Part 3, you'll think about the people you love and the causes you care about. This is in preparation for Part 4, which is the real business of estate planning. For some of you, Part 3 will be easy. You want to leave everything to your spouse and have 1 or 2 of your favorite charities you wish to support. You have to think about contingencies. What if your spouse goes before you do? Do you want everything to go to your kid? Divided up equally amongst them or distributed according to need? What about grandchildren? What about other relatives or friends to whom you may want to give part of your estate or some of your prized possessions? And what if you have a unique situation, like a child you don't feel is ready to handle that inheritance, or a special needs child who could lose out on medical benefits in the case of a large inheritance? These are all things that must be considered before you start working on your estate planning document. The more you have thought through your family and charitable wishes, the more efficient the estate planning process will be, and the more money you'll save along the way. Also in this step is the critical process of preparing your beneficiaries for their inheritance. Some families may want to be completely open about who will be getting what, while others may prefer to keep it secretive and avoid family battles. In any case, you want people who will be inheriting your assets to know how to manage, carry on your intent to preserve and grow the assets and not spend them frivolously on things, or God forbid, lose them to taxes. This is the time to talk to your spouse and your kids about what they might get if you die, and teach them to manage their inheritance. This will be a precious part of your legacy. Now we get to the traditional part of estate planning. All those decisions you made in part 3 about who should get what need to be legalized. And there will need to be a mechanism to transfer those assets to your loved ones legally. Now, this isn't always done via will. Sometimes you can transfer assets through account titling. If you hold titles such as the joint tenants with rights of survivorship, and if one of the tenants dies, the property will automatically transfer to the other joint tenant without going through probate. Another way is through beneficiary designations. If you have an IRA, you sign a beneficiary designation in which you name the person or person who should inherit the IRA if you die. This also allows assets to pass directly to the beneficiary outside of probate and regardless of what your will says. There are several legal ways to transfer assets to loved ones after your death. All must be coordinated. You may have some accounts titled jointly. You may have signed beneficiary designation. Depending on how complex your situation is and whether or not your estate is subject to estate taxes, you may also need a trust. You will also need a will to pick up the leftovers. Some people's estate plans are straightforward. They barely need a lawyer. They can do everything through account titling, beneficiary designations, and a simple will. Other people may need legal advice. We can help you make a determination and refer you to an estate planning attorney when you get to that stage of the process. This step should be quick and straightforward depending upon how much thought you gave to your beneficiaries in part 3. It's a matter of executing the wishes you already identified. Laying all this groundwork in part 3 will save you on legal fees. At the same time, you don't want to rush anything. Talking with an attorney can sometimes make you aware of possibilities you didn't know about before, such as planning contingencies or drawing up documents so they can't be contested. Trust me, reasonable attorneys earn their fees. Now we get to the fun part, creating your family legacy. This is where you make your life count for something by leaving behind a piece of yourself. Now, how you do this is up to you. We have worksheets and guidelines that can help get you started. You might begin by capturing your memories and writing down specific thoughts, such as what your children and grandchildren want to know about you. You may be planning to compile family photos or favorite recipes to hand down. You may have a particular skill, such as gardening or woodworking, pass on to certain family members. Now is the time to start thinking about these intangible assets that will make your legacy valuable to your family. Part 6 comes later, but it is no less essential than parts 1 through 5. Great that you're doing all this, planning early, long before you'll leave this earth. That means a lot can happen between now and then. So you must keep an eye on your plan and revise it if anything changes. Your plan is not set in stone. As your family composition changes, you'll want to revisit it. You'll want to look at your plan whenever there's a marriage, divorce, death, or childbirth. Or you might change your mind about something. You could always amend your documents for any reason at all. Trust me, having the wrong people inherit your money is almost worse than not having an estate plan. So that's our 6-part legacy planning process. We're getting close to the finish, so let's do some reviewing. We started by examining the difference between Randy and James's stories. The key takeaway is that your legacy will be written no matter what, better or for worse. So let's make sure you can control the final narrative of your life, because things can happen suddenly, death or incapacity. We saw the consequences of unpreparedness, pain, confusion, anger among family members that are left behind. Then we were introduced to generational planning and saw how it differs from traditional estate planning. And that led us to the understanding that the first step in generational planning is to ensure that our tangible wealth and assets get left to the right people or organizations. We've just introduced you to the 6 major steps in legacy planning. As you look at the 6 steps, you might think this is a lot to achieve. I feel that way too, because it is. But we've found over the years that when we work together and guide people through the generational planning process, they experience two things. First is a great relief that it's done. And the second is a new excitement and renewed energy to focus on the non-financial aspects of generational planning. This is the reflective part, not legal or business. It's the part where we reflect on your journey and share those stories that we carry in our hearts. This is our gift to the next generation. Our stories may be words, pictures, or actions. They may provide hope and healing to our loved ones. Just important are the things that we say and do that bring meaning, because we realize that we are carriers of the wisdom for our family. From generation to generation, each of us is a link in a chain that binds our families together. And that link is the mark we leave, our legacy. That's why I think many of you are here. I'd like to make a suggestion to you. Let's work together. Hopefully, you're all motivated now to start your legacy plan. Let's maintain that motivation by taking action. Here's an idea. Working together, we'll develop a plan for doing the many things that need to be done. People don't get around to estate planning because it seems too overwhelming and they don't know where to start. So we would like to break it into chunks for you, where we set some goals and establish a timetable for implementing them. For example, in week 1, you might sign your healthcare directive. In week 2, you might sign your power of attorney for financial decisions. We have a checklist of the things that need to be done to get your plan in order. Together, we can go through that list and check things off as they're done. We can share our resources. If you need a referral to an estate planning attorney or a tax advisor, we can introduce you to some of the professionals we work with. We can hold each other accountable. We'll have frequent check-ins and deadline dates for getting things done. This is all for your benefit, to keep you motivated and engaged so you will carry through on your plans. And we have a way to get you started as soon as right now. This is a complimentary 1-hour service I offer. You can schedule a one-on-one meeting to review your legacy planning checklist, identify what's already been done, and discuss what else needs to be completed. We'll also develop next steps for your most critical issues. After the meeting, we can work with you in various ways. We can be a resource and help you find the right people for additional expertise and assistance in completing your legacy plan. Naturally, we can also help you with any financial planning and investment issues related to you and your family situation. Regardless, when you leave the legacy planning assessment, we'll send you home with a specific action checklist for starting and completing your legacy plan. We want to help you be prepared and organized so you can have peace of mind knowing you've taken the proper steps to plan your legacy and share your values, your wisdom, and your insights with the next generation. We want you to have control over your legacy like Randy did. We don't want you to end up like a family suffering like the Gandolfinos. You can schedule your legacy planning meeting using the link below. Imagine how you'll feel when your legacy is all set. Trusted person is ready to step in and help with your healthcare decisions and your financial dealings if necessary. Your records are all organized and accessible to your loved ones. By leaving behind tangible and intangible assets, you'll be remembered for your unique contributions to the family and to the world. Legacy planning is not complicated. You just have to get started. So let's work together.